The hype surrounding Kenny Lofton Jr. is off to a huge start with the Sixers organization after he made his debut with the Delaware Blue Coats earlier this week. I want to be leading the charge for the hype train regarding Kenny Lofton Jr. because I do believe in him, and he showed why in his first game. In his debut matchup with the Delaware Blue Coats, in 29 minutes of play, Kenny Lofton Jr. finished with 30 points, 8 rebounds, 1 assist, 2 blocks. He had 4 turnovers, shot 9 of 15 from the field, 3 of 7 from 3, and 8 of 10 from the free throw line. We know who Kenny Lofton is at this point, and if you don't, you should absolutely be finding out right now that this is a guy worth watching, both from an entertainment standpoint. He plays a really fun and intense style of basketball. There was a play where he had a dunk where he was screaming in the guy's face after in this matchup. Extremely fun to watch, and one of the more unique players that we've really seen. I did find out his one of the nicknames goes by Junior a lot, which is cool. Kenny Lofton Jr., obviously, and not related to the Kenny Lofton that is the professional outfielder. No relation there. But the other nickname that he has is Gen Zebo, which I absolutely love because I think Zach Randolph is the guy I would give the closest comparison to. But regardless, Kenny Lofton Jr. is his own guy and a guy worth tuning into. I personally will be dropping down there next Saturday down to Delaware to check him out in person. Very excited for that. But I just want to talk about a little bit about him more as a whole and kind of his pathway to the Sixers that I'm beginning to see develop a little bit. Obviously, just one game. There's plenty more to go for the 21-year-old. Plenty more to figure out both from the Sixers side of things and Kenny Lofton. But he absolutely brought his A game in day one, and I expect that to continue moving forward. Now, a couple of notes that I wanted to make about Kenny Lofton Jr. To get the elephant out of the room here, we know about the weight issue, that this is a guy that entered the season reportedly over 300 pounds, which would make him the heaviest player in the entire NBA. And add that to the fact that he stands about 6'6", 6'7", somewhere in that range, that it isn't the ideal body type that you think of as an NBA player. But on the bright side of things, this is probably the slimmest that I've seen him, even dating back to his college days at Louisiana Tech. He looks much more slimmed down. And to add to this specifically, there was a report that came that said earlier this month, Lofton told the commercial appeals to Michael Cole that he had lost close to 20 pounds over the past 3 weeks. The Grizzlies listed Lofton at 6'6", 275 pounds, though Cole wrote Lofton was, quote, believed to be heavier than that ahead of the season. To become an NBA regular, Lofton will need to prove he can be adequate defensively despite being neither a natural rim protector nor an agile perimeter defender. Now, that is the part that I want to hit on biggest at the end there. To start with the weight thing, weight's different for each guy in the NBA, that there's guys that carry a lot of weight. There's guys that like to play skinny. It very much depends on your body type and your game. For Kenny Lofton's game specifically, it's not a game predicated on athleticism. It just isn't. That he's not a guy that's ever going to be a high flyer or blowing past guys on the drive. He is not Zion Williamson, and that's why I think Zion deserves a ton more criticism for the weight situation than something like a Kenny Lofton Jr. That when you look at Zion, it hurts his game. It hurts his just longevity, his ability, and just what a high level he's playing at when he's carrying these extra pounds, and we've seen that with him of late. When you look at Kenny Lofton Jr., I really don't think that's the case. That, as I mentioned, he's never going to be a guy where athleticism is his strong suit. He's crafty, he's competitive, he gets to his spots, he knows how to play basketball. He's a high IQ player, highly skilled. That is what his strong suits are. Now, I'm not saying that he should be carrying around over 300 pounds on his body. Obviously, you want to play at what a healthy weight is for you. And as I mentioned, this is the skinniest that I've seen him since his college days. Even at Louisiana Tech, I would think right now, based on how he looked in that Blue Coats game, notably smaller than I've seen him in past games. So, and as far as his outlook, that last piece there, and just to read it off again in this, is to become an NBA regular, Lofton will need to prove he can be adequate defensively despite being neither a natural rim protector nor an agile perimeter defender. That's the part that's going to hurt his game as well, because offensively, he's got it, that he can create for himself. He's got great passing IQ. Something that I don't think has been recognized enough is his ability to find guys with the ball in his hand. He can play make a little bit more than the numbers have indicated. But defensively, there are the concerns. What positioning does he match up with? Standing at 6'7", 275 is what the listed height weight is for that. He's not going to be a guy capable of banging with the big-time centers, that he's a little bit too small from that in the height category. That's probably the best place to play him, but he's never going to be getting up vertical, blocking shots, and that is something you have to keep in mind from a defensive standpoint. That I personally think the most important defensive position on the floor is a true rim protector, a big man that can clean up others' mistakes. That's never going to be Kenny Lofton, but he could be paired with that, absolutely. And the perimeter side of things, he moves better than I think he gets credit for. That I think oftentimes when you look at a player carrying a little extra pounds, you automatically assume that, he can't move, get him out on the perimeter, and there's plenty of guys that the evidence backs that up. I don't think that's quite Kenny Lofton. I do think he can move a little bit on the perimeter, but certainly not a guy that I'm signing up for in a one-on-one position against some of the bigger guards or wings in this league. He's just not going to stick, and that is the reality of it. So that defensive side of the ball is the biggest concern with his game and really his NBA future as a whole. Now, Nick Nurse was asked a little bit about Kenny Lofton Jr. as well as Kenny Lofton. Both these guys sat down, spoke to. Shout out to Kai Carlin of Sixers Wire. So I want to bring each of these quotes up here that I did think were interesting. I'll start with the quote from Nick Nurse, and he was asked about Kenny Lofton Jr. and said, quote, "He can really score the ball, right?" said Coach Nick Nurse on Christmas Day. "He can really score the ball. He's kind of unique, right? He's, 6'6", 6'7", and he's a center, and he's not afraid to play. He's not afraid to mix it up. He can score the ball. He's done it in a number of different competitions, right? And I like his confidence." These are all things that stand out about Kenny Lofton Jr. is this isn't a guy that is here for the meme, to be a meme. That he's here to ball. He's a legit competitor, a legit high-level hooper. Like that is who Kenny Lofton is. He's absolutely a hooper. He's a guy you drop him on any blacktop, and he's giving it buckets to whoever wants to walk up and run 21s with him. So that's what I do like about him a lot. Frankly, I think I love that characteristic in a basketball player. And one of my criticisms of these Sixers in years past is they tend to pick up these guys, the Matisse Thybulles, the PJ Tuckers, who have such like a niche skill. But when you take them out of that, like what do they really do? With Kenny Lofton Jr., he just finds a way to get it done. Now, Lofton Jr. was asked a little bit about why he chose the Sixers as a pathway and to sign here on a two-way deal, and did say some interesting things here. So he said, quote, "I just had a couple of offers on the table, about 6 or 7 offers, and me and my agent sat down and talked and decided that this was the best decision for me and for us. The Sixers are a contender. They have their eyes on the Larry O'Brien trophy. Lofton, 21, liked what Philadelphia had to offer. Quote, really everything," he explained. "They've got a great group of guys out there that's playing, and I feel like I could fit in, come in off the bench and fill that little role and play hard and win games." So great outlook there. Great just answer as a whole to kind of lay that out on the table, especially considering that he did have 6 or 7 offers. There's plenty of worse NBA teams that Lofton probably has a cleaner pathway to playing this specific season, but I do think this shows that he is taking the long view. And that kind of made me dig into it and think about it a little bit, and I've talked so much about this cap space plan for the Sixers, and really all the focus of that is getting that next star. But what I really haven't paid enough attention to is what that means for the roster around it. That as things currently sit, when you look at the Sixers cap and the salaries and what they have under contract, that there's so many expiring deals this summer with Tobias Harris, Marcus Morris, Robert Covington, Kelly Oubre, Pat Beverly, the list goes on and on. The guys that are actually under contract, there is Joel Embiid, obviously the MVP, reigning MVP, and possible 2-time MVP at this time in the offseason. Tyrese Maxey has a blank check attached to his name and will get the lucrative long-term offer that he desires at that point. There's B-Ball Paul, who, had that weird restricted free agent kind of period last summer. He is expected to be back with the Sixers, and as long as the Sixers make it past the first round of the playoffs, which I believe everyone is expecting, B-Ball Paul will officially be under contract. But then beyond that, it's all blank cap space. It's all just potential free contracts to be. So when you look at this from a Kenny Lofton Jr. kind of view, that's a potential roster spot that you could earn, and that your performance this season could absolutely lead to that next season. And that absolutely applies to Ricky Council IV, who has been hooping with the Blue Coats as well. Terquavion Smith still doing his thing down there. I will say I've been much more impressed with Ricky Council IV, which was the opposite that I felt coming into the season. Shooting the ball really well from the perimeter. His shot looks a lot cleaner, looks a little better. These are all notable things. So I think the 3 of those guys specifically, who are the ones occupying the two-way contracts at this moment for this season, I think they all have their eyes on a roster spot for next year, and they should. That I do believe these are legitimate NBA-level talents. And for Kenny Lofton Jr., there's probably not a place where you can kind of check both these boxes, where you're on a contending team, you get to soak up some of the knowledge, some of the abilities, some of the lessons that can be learned in this situation, and you also have the opportunity to carve out a role for you next year. If Kenny Lofton balls for the rest of the year and Nick Nurse likes him, there's a real chance that he could be looked at as a significant piece in the rotation. Now, that's being very optimistic and far from guaranteed. In fact, Kenny Lofton could show up there on next Saturday when I'm down there watching and shoot 0 for 20 from the field, and I got to change my tune a little bit. But the Sixers are in a good spot, and Kenny Lofton is in a good spot where his performance can largely dictate his future. And to touch on kind of his past performance and what to expect for them, I did want to acknowledge these stats a little more. So these are from the G League regular season last year, with the Grizzlies G League roster here, averaging 20.2 points per game, 10.5 rebounds, 3.9 assists, 1.2 steals. Shot the ball 53.9% from the field, just 25% from beyond the three-point arc. I do think that will go up a little bit. He looked very confident shooting the ball from deep in that lone G League game so far with these Sixers. But that rebounding is a real deal. That 3.9 rebounds is a real thing, and the steals is intriguing to me. Now, we've seen a player like Nikola Jokic, who has some similar, I guess, criticisms from the body type and athleticism standpoint, and Jokic has done a nice job of turning himself into a high IQ basketball player who still finds a way to impact games defensively by getting in passing lanes, using his active hands, being more of a steal threat than a block threat, which typically is not the case for a center, but I think Kenny Lofton could follow a similar archetype with that, and if he can become good at it and stay in this lane, that does translate and can be effective in a team setting. So that's something for him to work on and something to note. But the bottom line is I think this guy is the real deal. Now you look at the showcase numbers, and I've tried my best to figure out the difference between like the G League regular season and the showcase. From my understanding, and really what I think it boils down to is there's way less defense played at the showcase, and this is just kind of designed to run up their numbers and guys to get theirs, which I understand. Everyone's looking to coat their resume and get to the next level. But those showcase numbers for Kenny Lofton Jr. are even more impressive. 25 points per game in that one. I'm excited to see the type of leash that they allow him in Delaware. Everyone seems to be loving him down there, having him on the team. He is, an attraction to fans for sure. But I do think that his talent is the story here, that it is time to buying that Kenny Lofton Jr. deserves a legitimate look as a prospect, that he at least deserves that. He has played himself into that. I believe will continue to moving forward. So I want to hear what you guys think in the comments. How excited are you feeling about Kenny Lofton Jr.? Is this a guy that could potentially grow into a member of the Sixers in the 24-25 season? Because I believe so. But let me know in the comments. Once again, don't forget to hit that like button, drop a subscribe on the channel, and I'll be talking with you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.